Today on Inspirational People and Inspirational Stories, I'm joined by Meg Dunphy, HR Policy and Engagement Lead at CIPD Ireland. Meg plays a central role in supporting HR professionals across Ireland, driving initiatives that help organisations put people at the heart of their business. She's also one of the key voices behind the CIPD Ireland annual Wellbeing Conference happening next Tuesday, the 7th of October at Croke Park, where this inspiring event brings together leading experts and fresh perspectives on how to design workplaces where people can truly thrive. Today, we're going to delve into the why workplace well-being is so important and give a few tips and tricks to help you and your teams perform to the highest level. Meg, welcome to the show.
Thanks a million, Doug. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. I think we met a few years ago, actually, at one of these CIPD events, and it was a great event. I have to say, I really, really enjoyed it. I actually met a few people there that I've now become very good friends with. So I think it's a great opportunity for not just information gathering and inspiration, but also in terms of networking as well. So it should be fantastic.
100%. I've built up my network through it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So obviously this is all about well-being, but I know you're the first one up in terms of speaking next week. I'd love to know, in terms of well-being, is there some kind of story or anything like that in terms of why your passion is so strong?
I suppose, like most people, I have a personal and professional interest in well-being. I had a moment of reflection during COVID where my career, I wasn't sure if it was going in the direction that I was happy with. I was quite fatigued with what a lot of people, HR practitioners especially, would have experienced during COVID, where it was a big emotional burden. There was a lot of restructuring, there was a lot of redundancies, there was a lot of negative stories, people unwell, etc. And it did take a toll. And there was a point where I had to have a think to myself, is this the right path for me at this time? And I thought about where are my strengths and what do I like to do. And I actually decided to take a short career break because went, I suppose, straight from college into work. I had a child early on as well. I had my daughter when I was 23, so I was in the middle of study. So in an effort to, I suppose, prove to the world that I could have it all and I could do everything. I could have a successful career and be a young mum and do it all. I think I got to a point when it got to COVID that I was like, okay, I think I've reached my emotional limit now. So I took a little bit of time out and just thought about what do I like to do. And I'm very passionate about research, about looking at, I suppose, the impact of what we're doing, and very passionate about HR practice and the profession and what we add to organizations. So rather than me being in a solo run in an organization, joining CIPD and being part of that bigger picture for me is really positive, and that's how I kind of shifted into this role. But prior to, the reason I suppose why it was a natural progression for me was I did volunteer as the chair of the Southeast Committee for 4 years before this role popped up. So I already, luckily did know people that I suppose, that made it easier for me to see myself in that role because I knew what it was and I knew the type of people, which it was a very fortunate position to be in, because a lot of the time that is the nervous tension that people have. Will I fit in? Will the culture be right? All of that kind of thing. So a long-winded story of saying I'm passionate about well-being from both personal and professional point of view.
I love that. And I think there's a lot of people out there that during COVID went through exactly the same thing. And they wondered, what is my life about? And had a bit of a reset and rethink in terms of where they are. So I love that. And obviously, well-being now is probably one of the most talked about and one of the biggest growing areas in the world in terms of both in workplace and in personal, as you mentioned as well. In your viewpoint, what does a good workplace well-being scheme actually look like in practice?
Yeah. Well, I suppose, from a CIPD perspective, like there's 7 elements that we would say are quite fundamental. One would be the work environment and job design.
Hmm.
And we can talk a little bit more about that later on because, that I suppose is very important now in the world of AI and technology and skills gaps. How do we design and have that agile view of how the organization needs to look? Health and safety, people and relationships, learning, development and growth, total rewards and recognition, financial well-being and lifestyle. So all of these things, I suppose, should be integrated into the organizational practice to make sure that well-being is very much part of the policy and how we do things rather than an add-on. So I think if you have those core things in mind, and we would see that a lot of organizations now either have a standalone well-being strategy or a strategy that's embedded within their overall organizational strategy. So we are seeing that strategic lens increasing in organizations, which is very positive. I suppose another element that I would advocate for is proactive well-being. It's, I suppose, it is, you need to have the core well-being that you need to do, but being proactive in things like, we know that burnout is an issue. We know that workload can be an issue in organizations. We know that AI and technology is adding complexity. And how are you proactively looking at that in your organization to see, okay, if that is going to have a negative or a positive impact, what is it? How are you communicating that to people? How are you embedding or changing that in your practice, in your policies, so that, you don't reach the end of the line where, people are leaving your organization, you're not retaining staff and so on. So it's that proactive piece I think is very important for employers. And I know we're talking about the conference later, but that's a lot of what we're doing. It's well-being by design. So it's not, I suppose, waiting until there's an issue. It's about having that proactive lens on what do my workforce need? What's the demographic in my workforce? For like, things are changing so fast. We have in some organizations 5 and 6 generations in the workplace. How are they intersecting? How are you looking at that from your well-being lens? Another thing that's coming out from some of the organizations that we speak to, and one of them is actually LinkedIn, which will be at the conference, is people's energy levels. That's something that we're looking at from a well-being perspective, because their lives are busier, their work is busier, everything is up that notch, and energy is something, it's actually probably the currency of well-being now. And how are you looking after that for your staff? So, yeah.
That's, do you know what? You're talking my language now, Meg. In all my speeches, I always say that money is an exchange for energy, time,
Mm.
knowledge, and experience. And time, knowledge, and experience are all constituents of energy, because you have to put energy in to get all of those as well. And it's amazing that when you have that highest positive energy and you optimize your energy, you optimize your performance both in your job and life as well. And I think on the flip side as well, linked into that, is emotional intelligence is so important within the organization as well, because emotions, as I say, are energy in motion. And if they're all over the place and there isn't a stability in someone's mindset, it can really cause problems in terms of being able to discern the right decisions to make, whether you're, a financial guy, or whether you're, a HR lady, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to be able to optimize your energy, to optimize your performance, and absolutely love that. And it's interesting you mentioned that you obviously have a very good setup within the CIPD, and obviously are very much passionate about it by doing this wellbeing conference. But there are quite a few companies out there that see it wellbeing as more of a kind of like an extra perk. I've had a few, people approach me for doing talks, and some of them have, they value it correctly in the few thousands, and others like it would be a couple of £100 kind of thing, and you could just see the difference of how they value their employees. And I think what you're doing is absolutely crucial in terms of that, in terms
Well,
of.
Doug, I'll add to that. So, yeah, for that very reason, we've commissioned research with Wellaba, who look at employee experience and organizational performance and try and collate all of that information together. So we did a piece of research to look at what is the kind of quantifiable impact, because a lot of people like to speak in numbers, and if you're that way inclined, you want to hear the storyline that speaks to that. So we did an exercise to look at employee experience, which is obviously, well-being is at the core of that, and things like people's progression in the organization, their access to learning and development, their physical health, their autonomy, all of these things that contribute to well-being. And looked at organizations who invest in that. So they invest in making sure that their employees have longevity in their careers, they're developed, they have a safe place to work, they have all of these things that we know we need for good well-being. Um, and looked at their scores on that and then compared that to the rep track score, which is the customer perception score. And lo and behold, if your employee experience score is high, your rep track score is high. And so they're able to really show that tangible link now towards organizational performance and how you're viewed externally and internally, that they all sing off the same hymn sheet.
Mm.
And so we are launching the results of that survey, and there's actually some standout employers who will be there, and we can actually show how that all translates. So some really interesting stuff. And some of the sectors that do very well is the financial banking sector,
Mm.
actually agriculture, HR and professional services are in the middle. And then so we've kind of banded them into like, green, orange, and red, not calling out specific organizations, but sectors. And it's just fascinating to see that actually, if you're investing in well-being, it is going to translate into a good customer perception and a good organizational output.
100% agree.
Yeah.
There's a Deloitte study showing just in the UK that well-being can cost UK companies between 42 and 51 billion per annum through absentees and also lost productivity of presenteeism in terms of actually turning up in the best possible state as well. And actually, I'm a stock market guy as well, and I saw that actually, if you look at say even just the FTSE 100, generally the top 100 places to work for are performing a lot better in terms of the happy factor than the others. And it comes simply down to the results you get in life come from the decisions and the actions you take, and they come from your habits or your culture, but they come from your mindset. In other words, how you think, speak, and act. So if you think more positively, speak more positively, and act more positively, the end result is going to be more positive as well. So
Yeah.
totally agree with you in that.
Yeah, and Doug, to your point as well about the absenteeism, we just did research that was launched this month, actually, the Health and Wellbeing Report, and there was 1,000 respondent organisations in that, primarily UK based, but absenteeism rates have gone up nearly 2 days since 2023. Which is
Mm.
actually quite interesting, and nearly 4 days since 2021. So, like, the trajectory is up the way, and we know that mental health is having a major factor in that. So, our research in Ireland, the HR practices that we do annually, shows that musculoskeletal, and I can't believe I got that right because I usually trip over that, and mental health are like neck and neck with absenteeism levels. And so it is a concern. Mental health is something that we need to really invest in when it comes to well-being. And I think more so now with the onset of AI, the uncertain times that we're in, as well in relation to kind of geopolitical and economic and so on. So I really think that's, investing in those things is a very safe and important move for employers to make. Um, yeah.
Well, no, I totally agree because I think, look, regardless what happens, there's always going to be different. I can stand in front of a stage and there could be like 500 people there, and there's going to be 499 different perspectives of what I'm saying, and
Mm,
that brings within organizations sometimes difference of opinions and different lenses in terms of the way
mm,
we see things, and that's okay. And actually, diversity and inclusion is such a beautiful thing because you get more angles on the problems to give greater solutions for the answers.
mm,
But I think it's very important for us in terms of emotional intelligence and well-being to be able to really connect with people, understand people, and speak to
mm,
them through their lens rather than just our own as well. And that's where I
mm,
think this kind of thing that you're doing in terms of bringing great communicators, great mental health advocates together in a great environment to
mm.
be able to bring people together to learn and grow as much as possible. And I think that's so innovative. And in terms of innovation as well, is there any other kind of exciting innovations or shifts that you can see in the workplace in terms of well-being in Ireland or even globally?
Yeah, and it is one of our panels actually because we did go with that. It's like we you're in my mind. Um, yeah, so we did want to know what kind of innovative practice out there, and say ESB is joining us. They have recently linked their OKRs, which are you probably know, but objective key results. So it's their metric for performance, linked to well-being. So for the first time, if well-being is one of your OKRs, you're a well-being champion in ESB. Sorry, there's a little fruit fly. Um, There's yes, that's linked to your performance review and ultimately, could be a salary implication to that. So well-being is all the way through the reward chain. Haven't seen a massive amount of that previously. So that's something, really positive as well. We also then have, I suppose, a lot of movement around progressive policies and well-being, like things like fertility, adoption, that kind of thing. We're seeing an uplift in that as well. Employers actually, because it is 1 in 6 couples, there's research recently, 1 in 6 couples will struggle with that. So that's quite a high percentage of your employee of your workforce that are going to have that challenge within their lives. So I think employers are looking at what's happening in the world and adapting their well-being and reward strategies to adapt to that and cater for that. So that's positive. And then we have the Dubai police force actually joining us as well, just to give a global flavour. They're the recent winners of the Health and Wellbeing Initiative for the People Management Awards in the global CIPD. And they look very much at the micro level of employee voice. So they take it down to like you said there, what's happening, what's real for people, and they really use all of that to inform their well-being strategies. And they're looking at, I suppose, a three-pronged approach. It's employees and their communities and the nation as well. So I suppose they have to take such a wide lens. So yeah, so they're joining us as well to talk about how they really use employee voice to tailor what they're doing. So as well as them winning at the PMAs recently, they are the Healthy Place to Work highest global score for Healthy Place to Work. So of all the organizations that have been surveyed, they've come out the strongest. And I think it's down to the fact that they're taking it to that micro level.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I also think obviously culture comes from the top as well. We always say in terms of schools, the school is only as good as the headmaster or the headmistress and all that kind of stuff. And I think leaders, obviously, and managers play a large role in shaping well-being within the organization. How do you think these leaders need to implement it and get it right?
So I think when it comes to senior leaders, and I suppose if we're speaking from the HR practitioner point of view, it is ensuring that there's executive buy-in and that the language speaks to, like we spoke about earlier, what's the impact and the tangible benefits that as an employer for investing in all of these things. You can say it's increased retention, great, show me the numbers. You can tell me that it's attraction, okay, show me how our employer brand is linking well-being and that's having an impact on our attraction. So it's about, I suppose, having the data to really show what are the results, as well as we all know it's a good thing to do. But if I'm a CEO, I want to know, okay, exactly how does that translate in my organization? How do I compare to my peers? And that's something with our partner Wellaba as well. We've looked at how, certain employers stack up against other employers. So that kind of information is out there about you. And as an organization, you can craft that storyline or you can leave it play out without you being the author of that script. So as a senior leader, you can actually craft the messaging, the well-being story within your organization, which will ultimately, lead to more engaged employees, people wanting to work for your organization, not people not wanting to leave. So yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. And is there, on a personal note, is there any kind of well-being practices that you do yourself on a daily basis?
So my boss Alison will laugh because I am a big believer in breathing correctly.
Love that. Yeah, no, breath work,
Yeah,
very important. Yeah.
very important. So we do have Neil Amarco coming to the conference, and he did actually inspire me a couple of years ago. He came to Waterford, was in Mount Congreve, which is a beautiful gardens that we have in Waterford. If you're ever down, you should pop over to them. But yeah, it was. I suppose I learned a lot around. We don't even realize when we've got into that state of maybe holding our breath, anxious, anxiety, stressed, whatever it is, and just breaking that chain and being aware that it's happening and being
Mm.
able to reset yourself and kind of just take the pause, take the few minutes where you're like, I'm shutting down the laptop, I'm muting my phone, I'm actually just going into a room now and I'm just going to recenter myself, realize that this is all, this will all pass me by, it'll all be here after me. And just have that moment where you realize it's okay. I can just go back into myself and breathe, relax, and then tackle whatever I need to do. So for me, it's as simple as that. Maybe for others that sounds preposterous, but for me that works.
No, no, I think breath work now and meditation and visualization and grounding have all become mainstream. I do a lot of work with very high level C levels. And initially, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, when I first started, people were looking at me going like I had two heads. But
Mm.
now everybody is into it because
Mm.
they know the power of energy, as you mentioned earlier on. They
Yeah.
know the importance of being able to take yourself out of the emotion and commotion, bring yourself back into your heart self, ground yourself, bring the breathing back into the right state so your central nervous system is more relaxed. And then you can make more astute decisions in what you're trying to do and everything like that. So I love that. I think it's brilliant. Absolutely. And by the way, Neil, I've met, or Niall, sorry, I met, and he's brilliant as well. I've seen him a few
Yes,
times
he
and
is really good.
he's
Yeah.
excellent.
I
So,
haven't got to the ice bath stage. But I have done you have the saunas and then you have the plunge pools.
yep.
So I have a friend that lives in Greystones and we do that, but we're very quick with it. I don't think I breathe at all and I'm back out. So I haven't got to the stage where I'm actually able to breathe through like an adverse reaction like that. But I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Well, it does really work because it really does. The coldness really stimulates the vagus nerve, and that vagus nerve can calm down the central nervous system. And actually, I always say to people, having a cold shower in the morning or something like that makes you feel like a badass in the morning, so you feel good
Yeah.
about yourself for the rest of the day as well. So, which is great. So obviously next week we got the conference and it's all about well-being by design and we've got a great lineup of speakers I can see. Do you want to just talk? Because obviously you mentioned Niall. Do you want to just talk about speakers and what excites you most about the mix of speakers that we have as well?
Yeah, I feel like I don't want to be picking favorites when you're like, tell me about the speakers. It like this conference very much feels like my child. So when we do these events, I like the full team. We're so invested in it from the outset of figuring out like what's important, what's relevant, what do people need to know, who do they need to hear from, how can we bring it all together, how does it all sing together. So like they're all stars in my opinion. There's some interest, like we have the senior panel at the end of the day, which is what we talked about there around getting that executive buy-in. So I think that's really important as HR community to share stories about what works, what kind of storytelling, what kind of data can you bring to the table, the practicalities of what people are challenged with, all of that. So that's really good. We have Dermot Whelan, which we haven't mentioned yet, who
Mm.
is absolutely hilarious and very grounding all at the same time. I just did a post yesterday to say if you thought that mindfulness and fun were exclusive, they're not, because he's so zen, but then like very giddy and very, very funny. So he is like I suppose his contribution to the conference is what we spoke about earlier, HR practitioners do bear a heavy burden when it comes to if there's anything negative going on in the organization, if there's challenges, if, for instance, like, we didn't touch on menopause or mental, or like we did talk about mental health, but suicide, addiction. There's all these things going on in the workplace, which we know about. And Leah, who's one of our sponsors, has done the Mind Well report, who they've tracked that addiction is on the increase. Mental health, we've tracked that as well, is on the increase. So he's going to specifically speak to HR practitioners about how they can overcome that. Make sure they're like look at their own resilience and their own stamina, and really kind of work on that with that group, because I think it's really important that we take the time to nurture that group as the professional body, put our arms around and say, it's okay, we've got this, we've got it right. You get it right for your organization, get it right for yourself, and get it right for your employees. So he's going to do that piece at the end of the day, which I think will really set people off, uplifted and energized and ready to lead with confidence. So he's there. Our CEO, Peter Cheese, is coming. He's always a very good sponsor and supporter of what we do. So he's there. We've Brian Crook as well, who I know you know as well. And he is Workplace Wellbeing Ireland. He's going to do an interactive workshop, which is really interesting and something that I like to add to our conferences, because I know the feedback that I get is they want to be practical with it. So it's all well and good hearing from this person, hearing from that person. How do I apply it? So we're bringing it back to, what are your objectives? What are you trying to achieve? Let's tease this all out. So he's going to do that piece for us. Not an easy feat with 200 people in the room, but I'm sure he'll have it down pat. And yeah, lots of other panel conversations going on with some really interesting companies. As I said, LinkedIn are going to be there. We have Novartis are coming, Microsoft. So the HR, like the senior leaders from those organizations, are going to share, what's working, what's not working. And also some, not that it's all like the bigger organizations. So we have Gillian Bain from Chambers Ireland. Her remit is to roll out the healthy workplace framework from the government into small, medium enterprises. So those that don't have massive budgets, want to do well-being, want to look after their staff, want to be strategic about it, she's going in to support them to do that. So it's, we're covering all bases, hopefully, Doug.
That would be brilliant. No, and look, I've seen Dermot a few times. He's amazing. I've seen Niall, and I've done some of Niall's breath work. Amazing. Brian as well, amazing. And what I love about what you've just said about in terms of Brian, I mean, I've been speaking professionally now for 7 or 8 years, and I remember coming in and I was all about the inspiration and the energy in the talks. But then I realized very quickly how important it is to be interactive in order to be able to obviously have the visual and the audio, but also the kinesthetic, make people move, make them people feel. And as we talked about earlier on, emotions can really create feelings, which can create memory. And that's something that I'm sure Brian will do in terms of what he's doing, and Niall as well, I'm sure. And through laughter, I'm sure Dermot will, and the rest of them as well. So it'll be a fantastic event. And if anybody's on the fence, is there anything else about attending? Is there anything else you can think of for a reason why they should be there, other than you and I, is obviously as well?
So my main reason why, when I was in a HR practitioner role, I went to conferences like this, was to feel part of a collective, to be around people who understood what the job entails, the highs, the lows, share from each other. Like HR community are so good at sharing. Like peer learning is very much core for what we do. We also have lots of exhibitors that are going to be there on the day. I'm not going to be able to mention them all. I know that Employee Financial Wellness, though, are going to have a bespoke offering for HR practitioners, that they would be able to access modules around financial wellbeing for themselves. Because we're all about looking after our own HR practitioners at this wellbeing conference, because we know the cost of living, there's other things that are at play as well that we didn't even get a chance to unpack, Doug. But that's another reason. There's going to be some nice little takeaways for HR practitioners, and some demos and things as well on the day. So it will be very, very interactive and lots of networking. So we love talking. And yeah, it's hard, to get people to stop. But that's always a really positive part of the day is once we come back from lunch break, it's just the noise levels increase and everybody's chatting. And it is really a great place to meet people and build your connections, build your networks. And so that's as well as doing your CPD, which is also extremely important. So yeah, multiple reasons why you should go, Doug, and I hope that people do. So
Lovely. And that's next Tuesday, the 7th of October. It's at Croke Park. And
mhm.
how can people book themselves a ticket?
Yeah, so it's Eventbrite. So you can just follow CIPD Ireland on Eventbrite, and all of our events will pop up. So that's the easiest way to do it. CIPD members will have a discount, but it's open to all. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
As I said, I've been to these events before, and I think they'll be absolutely fantastic again. Anybody who's listening who hasn't got a ticket, get online, get your ticket. We'll see you there, and it should be an amazing, amazing event. Meg, we've run out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I wish you every success next week.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your support. And I can't wait to see you at the event.
Looking forward to it. My name's Doug Gordon, and you've been listening to Meg Dunphy on Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. I'm back next week with another inspirational guest. In the meantime, if you need to get in touch, please contact me at doug@dougdgordon.com. From all of us here in the team of the show, I wish you a truly inspirational week and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.